Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Sports Illustrated beat writer covering the Las Vegas Raiders and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. It's great to be with you today. Got a very special show that I think you're going to love. But real quickly, let me just give you a little advertisement for some shows coming up. Tomorrow's show is going to be all about the Raiders schedule that will be released later today. But tomorrow's show is going to go through and give you my predictions. As you all know, I do predictions twice a year. I do my predictions when the schedule first comes out, which you can read that article later tonight. And then I do it after training camp. I give you my final one. This is my fifth year covering the Raiders. My first year, I was off by one. My second year, I nailed it right on the head. The third year, I was deplorable, absolutely deplorable, horrible job. My fourth year, I was off by one. So my track record is I am either on the money or off by 175% of the time. And one year just completely terrible, embarrassingly bad. But that'll be tomorrow. Then on see what is today? Today's Tuesday. So then on Thursday, we have a very special guest coming on. Somebody that had a really unique relationship with Al Davis. And you're going to learn a lot about Al Davis in the Raiders and the way the Raiders kind of were formed and just some really great inside stories. I don't want to say too much, but it's fascinating. I think you're going to love to hear it, and I'm looking forward to that. And of course, all the usual shows coming up, all Raiders all the time. That's what we do. I want to give shout out to one of my emailers by the name of Carrie. And Carrie emailed in and wanted to know what goes on during the off season. What's happening right now with the Raiders that is that fans don't understand or don't know, and asked me, can I give an explanation of what's going on right now as the team prepares? So today's podcast, I think you're going to really enjoy. It's going to be extremely informative, starting with management, meaning Telesco and his crew, all the way down to the players, what's going on inside the building between now and training camp. So we're going to give you that insight. I think it's going to really help a lot of you understand the process. I guess you could say this would be educational, but I think it's going to be extremely interesting because fans want to know what's going on. So let's get right to it. Now, let's start with players. Players, there are two types of camps. There are OTAs, which stand for optional team activities, which means players don't have to be there. Now, I will tell you, unless you are a superstar, it behooves the player to be there because players that aren't there, that aren't part of it, they don't care. Teams cut them and move on. And they have that right, just like the player doesn't, has a right to be there. Players have a right, teams have a right to cut you. However, it used to be teams made it mandatory. And this is through collective bargaining. They've made the decision that it's optional. Now, most of the players, not all, but most go because they want to win. They want to be part of it. Don't assume, though, when a player is not there, it's a bad thing. Sometimes a player will go to a team and say, listen, we're trying to plan a family vacation and all of this, and I'm going to be in the building. You're going to see what I'm doing. And they're like, yeah, great, go. And so a player not being there is not like it used to be. Now, sometimes it is. Sometimes a player will send a statement. Sometimes a player will say, I don't like my contract. I'm not going to be there, whatever. But it's unsafe to assume. If you saw the voluminous amount of email I get, and I want to thank my staff because I just literally can't go through it all. I bet yesterday I got 50 emails maybe that were pages. I mean, long emails. And with as much email as I get, I just simply can't read them all. I have to, go through them. I have a couple of people that work for me that help me, that will pick emails if there seems to be a theme for the Q&A. I just can't, I literally can't do them all. And if they're super long, the chances are I can't, I don't read them. I can't. But if you saw the amount of email I get, and it'll say, boy, Hondo, I watched a video from the team and didn't see this player, or saw a video from the team, or saw pictures from the team and didn't see this player. What's going on? Why are they unhappy with them? They're not. It's just literally people are, and I understand why, because they're fans and they're looking for every bit of information. That is why I think today's show is going to be so helpful, so that you can kind of go behind the curtain, understand what's going on. And we're going to go right through the whole thing. We're going to talk from players, coaches, the ancillary staff, up to Tom Telesco, what's going on. So there's OTAs going on. In a couple weeks, in mid-June, there will be a mandatory mini camp, which means everybody has to be there. Okay. Now, I know of a player once who missed a mandatory mini camp at an NFL team. He had been in the building all off season, and it was scheduled to get married, and the marriage date was very important. His wife wanted to get married on her grandparents, and her parents had all been married on the same day. He goes to the team and explains to him, and the team is like, great, you know what? You've been here the whole time. We get it. We understand. Most of the time, though, everybody's at mandatory mini camp. But I know occasionally, sometimes, and whatever. I know a player one time whose mom was having open heart surgery. And, the team, he just wasn't there, and people went wild for speculation. I knew because he'd asked me and my family, my wife and I, to pray for his mom for her surgery. And someone had found out that I had known about why, and they said, why didn't you just report it? I said, because it wasn't newsworthy. I made it clear the player was not there, but it was nothing to be concerned about, but it was for their private business. So anyways, but for the most part, mandatory, unless it's something big, everybody's there. So let's talk about what's going on. Number one, there is no hitting. There's no tackling to the ground. Now, you go up and put your hands on somebody or whatever, but it isn't that. So one of the things that I would caution you about is a lot of people will say to me or to Zeke or, reporters, well, who's looking good? And this is dangerous. Now, it's also dangerous the first part of training camp when there's no physicality, there's no hitting, because everybody, offensive players in skill positions, tend to look much better when there's no physical contact. So it's very deceiving, extremely deceiving. But people want to know, and I understand why, and that's why I always every year give you the caveat. Remember, they're in shorts. Football's not played in shorts. It's like the 40-yard dash at the combine. I had an NFL general manager tell me it's a great sign, but it is not definitive. So right now, what are they practicing right now? Well, first of all, when they have a rookie mini camp, now the rookies who've made the team, draft picks, whatever, they all have a playbook, which is evolving. I'll get to that in a minute when I talk about coaches. They're not going to just go give a wonton playbook to a bunch, there's 30 some rookies there. They're not going to do that because they don't want guys to have the playbook or be able to make copies of it, who majority of them, vast majority, aren't even going to be part of the Raider organization. So you give them a very dumbed down book. And what you're looking for in this past rookie mini camp is, your drafted guys and a couple of UDFAs that you think have a shot. You're looking, and because it's not physical, here's what you're looking for. Number one, they're looking for the ability to retain knowledge. Now, let me give you an example. Now, this isn't a playbook. This is my Bible. But they got a huge playbook. They have a huge playbook. And so they want to know, because in the NFL, regardless of what you think and the reason I grab my Bible is that playbooks are that big or even bigger. There's so much information. The perception that, football players, you got to be dumb, see ball, get ball. That's not a reality. 90% of football players today there's so much up here. That's why a lot of people think it's just spin. I had an opportunity a few weeks ago. I was invited to go to a youth football camp, and asked to come be a guest speaker. And there are several hundred kids in front of me, and I'm talking about the NFL. And I said, is there any players here that have a 4-point? And there were a couple. And I gave them an NFL play, and I had a blackboard and I drew up the entire play. I drew every role of all 11 offensive guys, all 11 defensive guys, and drew where the officials are and what their job is. Okay. I said, great, thanks. You can sit down. Everybody looked at me like I'm an idiot. Well, an hour and 15 minutes later, I finished my talk and I brought this player back on the board and I said, I'd like you to draw the play where everybody was formatted and then tell everyone what every job is. Now, this is a kid with a 4-point, super smart. And I wasn't trying to make him look stupid. And he couldn't. He didn't draw the formation right. And I looked at him and said, this is why going to school and getting your education is so important. I said, if you would have been in front of an NFL team right there, they'd have been done with you, because you've got to be able to retain massive amounts of information. So let me give you an example. You come in on a day after a game, there's no practice. You get treatment. Tuesday, you come in and that's your day off. Okay. Wednesday, you then start to install the new game plan. Now, good teams may add 10, 15 to 20 on a Wednesday. And you only have a limited time because of the collective bargaining agreement to go through those plays on Wednesday in a classroom. Thursday, and then, on Wednesday, then you go out on the field and you walk through them. Thursday, you're then doing them physically, blocking, whatever. Then there's no physicality on Friday, and Saturdays you're off. You do a little bit of a walkthrough, but it's not a legitimate practice. I mean, if you can't sustain information in the NFL, you just can't play. You literally just can't play. So that's what they're looking for in rookie minicamp. Who can sustain information? Now, you got to have the intangibles, the height, the weight, the speed, all that kind of stuff. So they're looking at that. Now they also look at a lot of other things. A lot of other things. How do you get along with your guys? Are you somebody that works with other people? Are you a good teammate? They want to watch that stuff. So these rookie mini camps, you're all here because you think you have a shot. Now prove to us you deserve a chance to come back another day. Now you begin to weed out players right away. I know a guy at a rookie mini camp one time that they were given a play sheet. Now remember, this is a dumbed down play sheet. So if you give this play sheet to any other team, they're going to be like, we don't care. And he gets in there and gets the play sheet day one, struggling at the end of day one with it a little bit. This is a guy a team was interested in, very interested in this kid. This kid had a shot. Gets back day two, first they go to the classroom, first day of day two, and he had went back and slept. Cut. And this is a guy that I knew for a fact, because I knew a team executive that told me really liked this kid a lot. So the rookie mini camp is just to see who can evaluate information. Now, they may have two rookie guys remember, at this point, we're not talking about drafted guys, we're talking about UDFAs who just looking for an invite to come back. I mean, they know Bowers is on the team. They know Devonshire is going to be in training camp, the 7th round pick. They know a couple of the UDFAs are going to be there. These are guys that are hoping to get in a position. Okay. And let's say I'm just going to pick a random position. I always use the long snapper. Let's say that they know, okay, we need one long snapper from the UDFA group to be at training camp, and they got three of them. So they're just checking speeds. How quick does the ball get back to the punter? How quick does the ball get to the holder on a field goal or whatever? They're checking speeds, and maybe there's two guys that they're interested in, but they're able to judge the intangibles and say, okay, these two are pretty much the exact same guy, but this guy's speed's a little faster. We're going to give him the input. So rookie mini camp for guys that you know are going to be on the team, it's really important because you just get a chance to work them out. It's your first shot. So they're checking Bowers, Jackson Powers, Johnson. They're checking all the draft picks and maybe a couple of UDFAs that they already think are going to make training camp. They're looking for where are they at physically. Now, this may surprise you, but a lot of guys after they train so hard after the season until the combine or until their pro day at their school, but then they back off a little bit. Then they get selected and there's some parties and a little bit of, they want to know where are these guys at physically. Now, so that's more of what they're looking for from those guys. Now, the guys that are part of the team that they know are already going to make it have as much of the playbook that's done. I'll get into more of that in a minute. And so now they're doing some sessions with the full playbook. So they're already starting to install with them. Other guys are working on other stuff. And so rookie mini camp, there is so much going on. It's extremely busy. Now, you're at each practice, you have guys taping every single rep. And so you'll see guys the whole practice when a drill is done, running tape into the building and then putting new tape in. Why? Because they're cutting it up. So the moment coaches leave the field after practice and they're in their offices, they're watching reps of every tape. So let's say they want one long snap. They're looking at all three. Maybe somebody's looking at just the guards and they're looking at drills. What was their footwork like learning how to pull? Okay, what they're looking at all that stuff. Now, I want to just go backwards for a minute. I know of teams where when a player is out of the shower after a game, they all have a laptop or I don't know what they call them, but it's not a laptop that flips open. It's just like a screen. I don't know what I think they're called iPads. Excuse me. And every cut up of the game is on their iPad. So literally while they're sitting in their locker, they're watching film after their shower, or they're going home on game day. Everything gets cut up quick. And the Raiders have a tremendous film team. They are really, really good. So as soon as practice is over, coaches are evaluating stuff, bringing guys in. Hey, I want to look at this with you. I know that for some guys coming from colleges that aren't super big powerhouses and have all the NFL benefits, it's shocking to them. It's shocking to them because they're sitting in there with a coach and everything they just did for the last 2 hours on the field is now on a laptop and they're watching the film. It's fascinating how, especially again, smaller school guys learning that process. So the guys that are on the team, they're already getting some different installs. And so with rookie mini camps, that is what's going on there. It is very hard to win an invite from a rookie camp, but it's not impossible. All right, now you go to OTAs. Now, OTAs are optional team activities, but it's for your whole roster. These are guys that you know are going to be at training camp. Okay. So you're giving them as much of the playbook as you have done. Again, when I talk about coaches, I'm going to get into why I'm only saying as much because some of you are probably thinking, what do you mean the playbook's not done? And it's not. And I'll explain why in a minute. So you get into optional team activities and it's not physical, but it is a ton of classroom. Now, last year, Antonio Pierce didn't have a staff, didn't have a training camp, OTAs, mini camps. A lot of people are like, you're just making excuses. No, because that's where you install everything you want for the last year, or you foundationally establish what you want for the next year. So in these, there is a lot of time in the classroom and a lot of time on the field, but it's not beating each other up. Now, some people have asked me, and Kerry was one of them, how much is getting guys in shape? Now, the NFL is different. Many of you probably played high school football, but let me explain to you, and some of you even played in college. So let me tell you how the NFL is completely different. They do not come to camp to get in shape. Now, you may remember when you played high school football, the first couple of weeks were just conditioning, trying to get in shape to play football. These men are professionals. They are expected, you will arrive at camp in shape. You're ready to go. Because if you're not, we're just going to get rid of you. You're expected to show up, be professional. This is why the offseason workouts are so important. They only get a certain amount of limited time because of the collective bargaining agreement to practice. They're not going to waste that time running sprints. Now, I've seen from time to time, a player has a turnover, so he runs a sprint in his own. But this is not, well, a lot of people have that mentality. That's not going on at these camps. These guys are expected to arrive in shape. That's why testing out those rookies and rookie minicamp. Okay. Now I'm going to make a player up. Let's say that I don't think they drafted a wide receiver. No, I know they didn't. So let's say you get this wide receiver and all of a sudden in rookie minicamp, you notice, all right, his cardio is here, his speed is here, whatever. And you're like, listen, dude, OTA's starting in a couple weeks. You better be in shape or you're in trouble. You're in trouble. And that hurts guys. That hurts guys to not show up. I will tell you this is a factual statement. There were several people in the building very disappointed last year when Josh Jacobs arrived. They did not feel like Josh was in tip-top, ready to go shape. Now, I am sure that Josh would disagree with that. Okay? I know that I had told people that I believed he was going to come in and be in great shape. And I totally believe that. And I had reason to believe that. So when I heard after he got here that there were people that didn't feel that way, that was shocking to me. Shocking. I think that hurt Josh a lot. In the end, the Raiders still made him a massive offer. They made him an offer that I thought was too big. I think had Josh signed his deal at what they offered, I would have been critical of the Raiders that they spent too much. But they did what I have to choose my words here carefully. They made an offer to Josh that they were 100% convinced he was going to take. And you're only 100% convinced of something if you have pretty good assurances. Okay. But that hurt Josh last year. Hurt Josh with some of his teammates that were disappointed in him. I know they were. They told me they were. Didn't mean they didn't love him. Didn't mean they didn't care for him. But they were disappointed. Just like Darren Waller. Darren Waller was a very popular player. Guys liked him. By the way, I like Darren. He's a good person. Okay. There were times when he was injured and guys are out there, like look at Max last year. I mean, playing with a knee that could have went septic and had his leg amputated, but wasn't going to not play. There are some guys out there, no matter what, come hell or high water, they're going to be on the field. And then when there's guys who they feel like can play and don't, locker rooms are very sacred. That is tight knit. I always tell everybody, if you're a racist, you should have to go play football or be in the military. Because you quickly learn your team. You don't care what color your teammate is. You don't care if your teammate's a Republican or Democrat. You don't care about the color of your teammate's skin. All I want to know is, are you all in like me? Regardless of how much money we make, are you all in like me? And so with Darren, I think that hurts. I know it hurt him with some guys. It felt like he wasn't playing when he could have. Okay, Josh came in not in the best shape. That hurt him with some of his teammates. Rookie mini camps. So we're using a fictional wide receiver. Okay, you better get your crap together. You better show up at OTAs. Now, some players come where they were the best player on their team. And in college, they were able to loaf a lot. They were able to just show up and be able to play because they're naturally better than everybody. Okay, that doesn't happen in the NFL. Everybody in the NFL is a great player. Everybody in the NFL is big, fast, strong, whatever. Everybody in the NFL has a skill set that has them there. You can't fake it here. So again, that's rookie mini camp. So then you come into OTAs. Now, in OTAs, this is a bunch of install. They've already done some stuff in the classroom, but this is everybody together who's there. Again, remember, they don't have to be there. A Max Crosby could miss an OTA, and while they would be disappointed, he's Max. Okay. A Devontae Adams could miss an OTA, and while they would be disappointed, he's Devontae. That's why you saw their Tom Brady always did it, and then the one year he didn't, it shocked some people. You've seen Aaron Rodgers from time to time that didn't do some OTA stuff, not because they're bad guys, they didn't need to. Okay. But OTAs is a ton of install. This is all stuff that Antonio Pierce didn't get last year. So this is Getsy. This is Patrick Graham. There is going to be some new wrinkles to the Raiders defense. That is all I'm going to say. Not going to give anybody any hints. Would not be fair to the Raiders. But they're installing new stuff. They're installing new special teams. So OTAs, although you're not beating each other up physically, it is so mentally. They are in the classroom. They are out on the field, all of it. And OTAs are vital. I know that fans want games. I get that. You want the physicality. You want to see all that. And I don't blame you, by the way. I love that part of football. I love the bam. I mean, I just love that. Okay. But OTAs and mandatory mini camps are so valuable. And as a journalist, let me quickly tell you, I'm evaluating, are they having to teach a guy something twice? Okay. So let me give you an example. Jacorian Bennett last year, no pads. So let's not pretend it was anything it wasn't. But in the rookie mini camps, the OTAs, the mandatory mini camp, Jacorian showed a lot that had a lot of people excited. I'll give you an example, and I'm not going to give away any details that's unimportant, but he jumped in. He wanted to take reps against Devontae, and Devontae beat everybody because he's Devontae. And I watched him run up to Devontae after Devontae really made him look bad and asked him about something. And Devontae, I specifically remember I was standing there with Zeke, and Devontae showed him. And now I couldn't hear the conversation, but Devontae was pointing to his hip. And to me, the perception was, I saw your hip alignment. I knew what you were going to do, and I just did something different. I watched Jacorian really, really close throughout the rest of camps and watched how he did a really, really good job. So he only had to be coached on something once. Now, he had lost some confidence early on. He sure did. But he's also very young. But the point was, as I saw his ability to obtain information, very smart kid. I'm telling you, we don't know what Jacorian's going to do in year 2. We don't know. And I'm not sitting here trying to pretend that but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to believe in that kid until I have no reason to believe in him. A lot of people struggle with confidence their first year, but that kid is smart. He's a good kid, and he's fast. He has the ability to play in this league. Now, he's going to have to believe it, and he's going to have to demonstrate it. But anybody throwing away Jacorian Bennett at this point, that's ignorant. You may be right. You may get lucky and guess, but it's only going to be a guess. I know inside the building, there's a lot of hope for Jacorian. They believe in him. So they're looking for that. They're installing a bunch of information. They're being tested. Most people don't know that. I'll get into more of this in a minute, but they're being tested on their retention of information. What do you have? How much information do you have? Now, in OTAs, it's literally throwing everything on the wall and seeing what sticks. Then you get into mandatory minicamp. It's testing, finding out what you know, how much more can we add. Now, in mandatory minicamp, they're also adding more of the playbook. It won't be completely done, but it'll be very, very close. And in mandatory minicamp, everybody's there. And they are going at it. Mandatory minicamps, tons of time in the classroom, tons of it, and a lot of explaining, a lot of on the field, walking through. Now, they'll start at walking it, call it walkthrough. Then it's half speed, then it's full speed. Now, again, no pads. So you expect your skill position guys and your offense especially to be better. I remember one time in training in an OTA and a mandatory minicamp on a team I was covering, reporting how good the defense looked. That should scare you because there's no physicality. So, Max Crosby walks up and has to stop. He doesn't get to sack anybody. So quarterbacks get longer with the ball. Got to think about that stuff. So some of those stats are going to be deceiving. I remember one time, and I want you all to remember this because there's going to be a cute quarterback competition later this year with Gardner and Aiden. I remember specifically once covering a team with a quarterback competition. And there are certain parts of camp you're not allowed to report, which is, basically, I can say X had this many catches, look good. But we're not talking about schematics and that kind of stuff. And they had told us anything that goes on in the play is not allowed to be discussed. Outside of, you could say this person had this many catches or this guy had an interception. But they didn't even want us with the team I was covering to say what quarterback threw the interception. So there was a player that did well, a quarterback, allegedly. But for those of us in the camp, we knew the defensive end would have sacked him, but the play went on and he had 8 or 9 completions well after he would have been sacked or had to throw the ball away. So his numbers were, so I kept saying during this competition, I think quarterback B has had a much better camp. And people, you idiot, you don't know anything. These other guys are reporting. Yep, I know. And then all of a sudden, camp breaks and quarterback B was named the quarterback. Well, it's because quarterback A had a lot of his completions that weren't going to be completions. So you have to understand there's some things that we're not allowed to report. Now, each team's different. Some teams allow you to report more, some don't. So you go into OTAs and it's a bunch of what sticks on the wall. You go into mandatory mini camps and then it's most of the playbooks done. You're installing things. Now remember, you're not installing physically. So the mandatory mini camp is to set the stage so when they get to training camp, now they don't have to go through as much of the walkthroughs anymore. Now we can practice it physically. So then after mandatory mini camp and all of that's done, there's a break where they get several weeks where they get to go break to get their mind right, vacations, that kind of stuff before training camp. Okay. Then they report to training camp. And remember, the first few days of training camp, there's no pads. Then when you get to pads, then you get to the physical part of camp. And it's brutal. And let me tell you, it is brutal. Now you may say, well, it's not like it used to be with 3-a-days. You're darn right it isn't. But it's still tough. Now, I'm going to tell you something. As a journalist, it makes my life difficult that they're going to Costa Mesa. But who cares about me? I think it is the right choice for the organization. Who cares about me? Screw me. I'm going to rent Oh, my wife picked it out. It's something B and B, a bed and breakfast. Something. It's something bed B and B. I think it's something bed and breakfast, but it's something. I usually stay at hotels. I'm going to be renting a place. Okay, it's inconvenient for me. It's expensive for my company, but guess what? That doesn't matter. It's the right thing for the Raiders. Why? Because you're going to be out there in Costa Mesa, which is beautiful weather. I mean, mid 70s. Nice, nice. Mid 70s, comfy. I mean, you're not out there battling the heat and battling, you know, the brutal physical nature. Now, these guys are practicing every day. From time to time, there will be a day off, obviously, but they still go in and get treatment. They're still around. A lot of team building. I knew a coach one time whose team was just giving maximum effort, and he was shocked. And the team actually made the playoff that year. And so they show up one day and only thing in their locker is shorts. There's no pads. So they put their shorts on, even no helmets and a towel. And they all get in there and they put everybody on buses, and they had rented a local water park and just took all the players to a local water park that day. Just give them a day off to relax because they're putting in maximum effort. So understand, between now and training camp, it's a lot of install. It's a lot of head knowledge. And the players are still working out because they've got to be in peak physical shape. Now, let's use Brock Bowers for a minute. He is a unicorn. He could be a dominant NFL player at multiple positions: wide receiver, tight end, running back, tackle. I mean, he is just a unique one. All right. But Michael Mayer has been killing himself getting in shape. And Michael Mayer was, many people thought, including the Raiders, was the best tight end in last year's draft. And so Michael Mayer is going to be up in great shape. And he's no wimp. He's no bad guy. He's good. He's a great player. Do I think he has the skill set of Brock Bowers? No, but I don't think there's a huge difference. Okay. And we know they brought in Harrison Bryant, who's been working his tail off, and Cole Fotheringham, that many people, myself included, think should have made the team last year. So Brock Bowers is going to be the most physically talented tight end on the Raiders team when minicamp gets here and training camp. But he's got a bunch of really good guys behind him that are going to be pushing him. So they understand they're working out. So when they're not in OTAs or they're not in mini camps, which mini camp is 3 days, or the mandatory mini camp, they're in that building working out, lifting, running, still looking at film, still checking things out. Still, they're watching their films from mini camp and OTAs. All right, I struggled here. I want to really watch this. Okay, I know of players before who the coaches will say, go watch film on this guy. Okay, Michael Mayer was shown a ton of film last year of Rob Gronkowski. A ton of film on Rob. Watch this. This is kind of, what is there some things you can add to your skill sets? So that's what's going on right now, is a lot of the physical work on the days that they're not working, but a ton of installs. So now let's go to the coaches. What's going on with the coaches right now? Well, first of all, they've looked at all the rookies who looks like they have a shot. Now, it's a long shot. A UDFA to make this team is a long shot. That is why when a UDFA does it, you know they worked and earned it. That's why I root for the UDFAs. Antonio Pierce was a UDFA. All right. So now they're getting ready for OTAs. All right. How much of the playbook we have done? Then they're looking at, all right, how do we want to install? Now, remember, they've got a lot of their roster that's been overturned. So let's go back to basics. Let's go back to day one. For example, John Wooden, the great coach at UCLA, the basketball coach. The first day, After all the freshmen arrived at UCLA, do you know the first lesson that he taught? And he personally told me this. How do you put your socks on to avoid getting blisters? Now, they're not doing that in the NFL. They've already gone in. They've been sized for their helmets. It's not one helmet fits all. They've been sized for their cleats. They've had their BMI, their body mass index, already in a bod pod looked at. They know, hey, you should be eating this many calories. We want you at this weight. You should be able to lift this, run this, do this. So they've already got all of the intangibles that they're working on. Some guys are on massive caloric intake because they need to gain weight. Some guys are chubby, need to cut some weight, they need to cut their caloric. Now, they'll also come in and say, okay, during OTAs, you're going to be burning off X amount of calories. We need you to lose a little weight, so stay where you're at. Or, hey, you're at a perfect weight. I knew an offensive lineman one time who was at the perfect weight they wanted him. So they were going into mandatory minicamp, a lot of running, a lot of working on plays, and they upped his caloric intake. I think he went to 10,000 calories. But then when he got to training camp, when it was physical, they upped him to 20. That's a mammoth amount of calories. I think the normal American diet recommended is 2,000 or 2,500. But because of his size and the amount of sweat and all that, they way upped him. And the Raiders facility is open every single day. Great food, all kinds of choices. They'll grill you whatever you want. An awesome salad bar. There's pasta, chicken, desserts, sushi, everything. They do an awesome job. Mark Davis, again, spares no expense taking care of his players. And so the coaches now are looking at, what do we install in OTAs? Okay, we've let a couple of UDFAs stick around now after camp. Do they earn the right to come to mandatory? Do they earn the right to come to training camp? Or has Telesco gone? And now remember, they're watching film here. So Telesco, let's use long snapper again. He may say to Antonio Pierce, hey, Antonio, come here, will you? Grab Coach McMahon, the special teams coach. And they come into Telesco's office. Hey, here's what we have at this position. Here's a UDFA. What do you think about this guy? And he shows him a free agent or a guy that may be an undrafted agent. You know, I found this guy. His agent sent me something. What do you think about this guy? You think it's worth telling this guy, hey, we liked you, you did good, but you're not coming to OTA and invite this guy to come and then make a choice between the two? That's going on every day. Or do you want me to go sign this free agent? And if I sign him, we're getting rid of this UDFA, or do we keep him around, try to do it for the practice squad? But they're constantly looking. Now, every single day, we're talking about coaches. I'll get to the upper management in a minute. So they're looking at that. They're looking at installs. So then they come out of OTAs and say, okay, listen, we think the guys really got this. So we're going to spend very limited time at mandatory camp, but we don't think they got this. We need to spend a lot more time there. And we're also installing more from the OTA. So they're doing all of that. They're literally checking all of that. It is all prep work, but it's important prep work. These are not just do it for no reason. It's preparing the guys for training camp. So then they get ready for mandatory. Again, looking over the rosters. Have there been any guys who had a legitimate reason not to be there that we've approved? Great, no problem with that. And, you know, they're good about working with guys, and guys know the importance of mandatory minicamp. But when a guy comes with a legitimate reason, they're not jerks about it. Now, you're a guy trying to make the team, and your sister's getting married, and it's important to get married on this date. Okay. All right. You're not going to get the leeway that a Max Crosby or Devontae Adams is going to get. Just not that. That's not going to happen. It's like Jimmy Johnson said, I don't treat everybody the same. I knew, I'll tell you guys a story. You'll appreciate this. There was an all-pro running back on a team. Not going to tell you what team. And there was a rookie UDFA on the same team. And they're in film session one day. And every day, the all-pro running back would bring a pillow to film session. And when film session started, he would lay on the floor with his pillow and go to sleep. So this UDFA rookie running back one time accidentally falls asleep in film study, and the head coach cuts him. And when the player asked the head coach, but the All-Pro sleeps, he said, "Yep," because when the lights comes on, he produces. You're not even going to get a chance to show me what you can do when the lights are on. Everybody's treated fairly, but fairness is based upon a lot of things. If you're a parent and you have a child that never gets in trouble, and you know what, screws up one time, you're probably going to show them different grace than your child who's in trouble all the time. And if you're only the parent of one child, I feel bad for you, because when you have a lot of them, you understand the differences in parenting. I remember there were different rules for me than one of my brothers, and it was warranted that there be different rules, different behavior patterns. And so that's what's going on again as they then transition from OTA to minicamp. Okay, in minicamp, all right, what do we got to throw as much against the wall as we can, guys, because when we get to training camp, it's not like it used to be. You don't get 3-a-days. You know, you do one practice physically, then one practice kind of in the classroom. You get more time, but mandatory minicamp, everything's thrown against the wall. That's why the more guys who are at OTAs, optionals, and you're able to throw against the wall, it allows you to get more done in OTAs. So when I'm watching OTAs, let me tell you what I'm looking for: participation. And then I'm talking to coaches, and you're going to hear me ask these questions. Tell me about retention. Are you happy with the retention you're seeing? Then when you get into minicamp, you'll hear me ask, okay, the retention from OTAs, how much has that helped you in being able to install during minicamp, mandatory minicamp? So the more that's taken from OTAs, then the more you can do in mandatory minicamp. I covered a team one time. It was the Lions, who were not good, and OTAs was a disaster. There wasn't a whole lot of retention. Guys were just kind of, we're here. Let's have a little fun. Some guys weren't there, and so it made mandatory minicamp. They had to do almost go back to the beginning. So when they got to training camp, they weren't ready. I've covered teams that OTAs, everybody was there. Mini camp, everybody was there. The retention rate was high. They got into training camp and they were way ahead of where they needed to be. In fact, I know for a fact they were working on week 3 installation in training camp, which is unheard of. I've only seen it one time in all my career. And so by the time they got to week 1, 2, and 3 of the season, when they got to week 3, this is stuff they had already prepped for, because the team was so focused. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I have no idea what's going to transpire through OTAs and mandatory minicamp, and neither do you, and neither do the Raiders. But the level of buy-in on this team is so high, it's very similar to that other team I covered. The only one that I saw them being that far ahead. I am super excited for training camp, super excited for mandatory training camp and the OTAs. I'm super excited about it. I really want to see. I think this team is going to be, even with a new staff and all the new stuff, is going to be exponentially better. Now, let's go to, talked about players, talked about coaches. Let's talk about Telesco and all of it. So right now, the Raiders staff, and I'm talking about the film staff, which you don't see a lot about them. You don't hear a lot about them. They're kind of the unsung heroes of Raider football. These are the guys that, they're not making massive buck, but this is a lot of young guys who are very good with cameras and all of this kind of stuff. That's why I tell young kids all the time, if you maybe aren't going to play football, but you love the game and want a job in it, there are lots of ways to be employed by pro football teams. You can work in the equipment management side. You can work on the film side, which I'm telling you, coaches will tell you. Coaches will tell you those guys are vital. They're in there and they've got a crew of guys taping, a crew of guys running, which means as soon as something's over, they're taking the chips and running them in. They're cutting everything up, getting it on guys' pads, iPads, getting them on laptops and whatever. So the coaches come in, they grab their lunch, they go right to their office, and they're watching practice instantaneously. I'm telling you, the NFL, the way it operates, those young men and women are unsung heroes. In fact, maybe next off season I'll do a story on them and spend some time really let you go behind the scenes, because those people are phenomenal. They're the players work hard, not denying that, but that film staff works as hard as anybody, and they don't get a lot of the credit, but they are phenomenal. Then you have film study people right now that are breaking up all the opponents on the schedule. All right. So they're going to do cut-ups of Bo Nix and some things he did at Oregon. What are his weaknesses? So when they play the Broncos, they're ready for his weaknesses. They're also going to look at what has Sean Payton done in these situations. What are some things going back over the past that Sean's done, maybe as he's added new personnel this year? All right. So for example, Luke Getzey's not had two tight ends like he has now. The Raiders in the modern era have not had two tight ends. So they're going and looking at, okay, where has Luke Getzey come from? We know Joe Philbin's on this staff. We know Antonio Pierce is on this staff. What can we look at film on the 12 personnel? That's what the teams are doing who are scouting the Raiders. Okay, the Raiders have an entire film staff cutting everything up about the University of Michigan. A lot of last year. Then they're looking at the personnel that the Chargers had and say, okay, let's go back and look at Jim Harbaugh. What has he done when he's had this personnel in the past? It's all cut-ups and it's all speculative. But all of that's being done. Why? Because they're going to have scouts whose only job, they've got a scout whose only job is to watch the Broncos throughout the whole season. So week 1 of the Broncos, if they don't play the Broncos, they're adding all that tape. Week 2, if they don't play them in week 2, they're adding all of that tape. Now, if you're a guy who maybe they play a team once and they play them in week 16, you got a lot of time to build up to that. But still, you're evolving the scouting reports. So what's going on internally? The scouts are putting together everything on other teams. Those are then they're also scout. Then they have scouts also watching what are other players doing. Okay, here's a UDFA long snapper we really like. He went to the Colts. Okay, the Colts probably aren't going to keep him. So if he gets cut, do we then go try to sign him again because we like him better than what we have? Okay, then they're looking at all the rosters. Okay, they picked a guy here, they picked a guy there. They have too many. So are they going to cut somebody else and keep them? Or are they going to cut somebody? Is there a potential trade there? Or do I need to be watching them to cut this guy because I want to sign this guy? There's all kinds, and they're doing this for all the other 31 teams and doing it for themselves. Your college guys are already cutting tape up on who's potentially eligible next year for the draft. You've already got some guys you've scouted. So now you're starting to put a board together. Right now, sitting here in May, who are our top 100 guys for next year? Now that number, that changes all over the board. That thing is like a teenage girl's mood. It can be blue, 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 blue. I mean, there are going to be guys who are going to be top tier, top 15, top 20 guys next year in the draft that aren't even in the top 100 right now. But you're still putting that together because you have to have somewhere to start. So all of that's going on right now, and it's a massive amount of work. Massive amount of work. Okay? You're looking at film from spring games, college spring games. Hey, is there anybody that's showing, wow, look at this kid? Now, there may be a true freshman that did a couple things. So they have a top board for 25. They got a top board for 26, 27. So they're watching. Why? Because when a scout goes to a game, is he primarily watching guys who are going to be draft eligible that year? Yes. but he's also watching guys who are potentially draft eligible down the road. They're constantly. There is so much work that goes into a draft, and there's so much work that goes into. And the Raiders, this is where Dave Ziegler and Champ Kelly and Tom Telesco has continued it, though, where they overhauled everything. They have scouting on all 31 other teams. They're self-scouting themselves. Now, not this year, but next year, Antonio Pierce will have his defensive coaches watch his offensive team's tape and go back to his coaches saying, hey, here are some tendencies. And he's going to have his offensive coaches say that to his defensive guys because that's self-scouting. Jim Tressel, who was one of the greatest college football coaches of all time and a dear friend of mine, I love Jimmy. One of the things that Jim Tressel did at Ohio State that a lot of guys didn't, but it's done now universally everywhere, was self-scouting. The Buckeyes did a ton, and in their rise to power under him, that was one of his big things, is he believed in self-scouting. So all of that's going on right now. There's the preparation for next year's draft. There's the preparation of scouting the other 31 teams. There's a board and a knowledge of, hey, if we need to go trade for somebody, here's a guy. Here's a guy we're interested in, whatever. All of that's going on right now with the Raiders. So you may think it's because it's the I hear people say all the time, well, Hondo, how do you do a podcast every day when there's nothing going on? Are you nuts? There's a ton going on. Now, if you're not connected and you're not getting information, I get that. But you may remember last year, right after the draft, somebody asked me, if you had to pick who the Raiders took this year, who would it be? You can go back and find it. I said Brock Bowers. Now, I just knew how much they loved him. They'd been scouting him for 2 years beforehand, and the Raiders loved him. All of the first year of Ziegler and all of those guys, when I would talk to people in the building, hey, and it was still a year away. Who are some guys coming? Brock Bowers. I knew how much they loved him. They had scouted him a ton. So even after a change, Bowers had grown so far, didn't think there was a chance the Raiders would get him. Now, there's some of those guys on that 24 radar, right? I mean, on that 25 radar right now, and some 26 guys and some 27s. But there is all of that going in right now just for preparation of the season. And so that's, Kerry, that was a great question. I hope I gave you a lot of good information. What's going on right now that gave you a rundown of what's happening. I hope that helps. I hope it's a benefit. Remember, tomorrow we're going to be breaking down the schedule. Don't you miss tomorrow's podcast. And let me tell you, on Thursday, woo, shoot this thing. I got a treat for you with some Al Davis stuff. I bet a lot of it you haven't heard. It's going to be fun. Looking forward to that. Please follow me on IG when you go to @HondoSR, X, formerly known as Twitter, when you go to @HondoCarpenter. And don't forget, SI.com/NFL/Raiders. Now, let me tell you, every day we're producing double-digit content of written stories about your beloved Raiders. If you love the Raiders, and I know you do, nobody's covering the Raiders more in depth than us. We're doing 10, minimum of 10. I think yesterday we did 12 minimum pieces of content every single day, writing about your Raiders in the middle of May, keeping you informed, and it's all 100% free. So like, subscribe, follow, get on there. But we appreciate y'all. Have a wonderful day, and God bless you. See you tomorrow.